Hi, I'm Amanda with 919 Marketing. Thank you so much for being with me today. Today, I have Tyler DeMuth, the Executive Director of Franchise Growth at Teriyaki Madness. Tyler, thank you for being here.
Absolute pleasure.
I'd like to start off today with asking you some of your most frequently asked questions in your sales process. And I wanted to begin today with how long does it take to open and go through the process?
Yeah, great question. So for us, the initial kind of education qualification process will last anywhere from 4 to maybe 6 weeks. If there's a mutual fit at the end in terms of signing the agreement to opening the doors and serving their first bowl, is anywhere from 6 to 12 months. And that comes from, let's call it, dealing with landlords, negotiating with them, and then through that construction and build out process. So 6 to 12 months, I think typically we target about that 7 to 8 months.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question. What do you typically look for in the real estate process, specifically like demographics, psychographics? What is it that you look for specifically?
Yeah, so from a real estate site selection standpoint, we look for a lot of daily needs drivers. So I think your upper end grocery stores, home improvement centers, gyms, we're typically middle income and above. So let's call it about household incomes north of about that 55,000. And then folks that are health aware. So not necessarily health conscious, but they're people that are aware of what they're putting in their body. Age ranges from, let's call it 16 to 55. We do phenomenally well with blue collar and white collar individuals. The only kind of area we try and stay away from is kind of the lower income communities. And once again, that kind of ties back to that 55,000 and above from a traditional site standpoint.
Gotcha. Great. Thank you. Next question, moving into support for the Teriyaki Madness model, what does support look like prior, at, and post grand opening? And specifically explain the process of the shop assistance fee, if you could.
Yeah, so we spend a lot of time and resources on that support side. So I think as you look at our system, only about, let's call it 30% of my system comes from a food background. And so we over-index on support and training. And it starts off with that shop opening assistance fee. So that kind of covers the entire real estate construction process where we project manage that for franchisees. So they don't have to come from construction backgrounds or whatever that might be. We drive about 75 to 80% of that entire real estate site selection and construction process. And then as franchisees get closer to opening, they're going to go through about 3 different batches of training. First batch of training is initial training. It's 4 days. Let's call it, you're learning everything at that 30,000 foot level. So how to navigate our intranet, what to look for in ideal employees, what to avoid. And that will happen in the first 90 days of someone being a franchisee. The second batch of training is what's called hot training, which stands for hands-on training. And that's where folks will live fire in one of our corporate Teriyaki Madness locations, learning all the recipes, cooking techniques, every role inside of that Teriyaki Madness, and then how to run it from a day-to-day level. So inventory ordering, labor scheduling, so let's call it more of that kind of hands-on or managerial type training. And then the final batch of training people go through prior to opening is the grand opening training. And so that is where we will, 2 to 3 trainers will come out to that franchisee's site for a total of 12 days. So we show up 8 days prior to the grand opening, and then we stay 4 days after we've opened the doors. And that is going to be the team that trains all of that franchisee's staff. So we'll start making sure we have the right people in the right positions, making sure that people are picking up all the training components, and then it's also a good reminder from that hot training that the actual franchisee went to. And then we stay that 4 days after just to make sure everyone's handling the rushes, food consistency starting to hit, and then we take off. Now, the biggest group of people, so that gets you through your grand opening. But the biggest group of people that franchisees will work with are someone we call our business coaches. Business coaches will originally show up around week 1 to week 2 after the grand opening, so we don't leave people alone too long there. And these coaches can do just about anything and everything in a Teriyaki Madness. So they can kind of help up-level employees or assistant managers, managers. Will typically show up 2 to 4 times in person every year. And then people will have weekly calls with their coach to kind of understand their P&L, understand what pain points they're running into, so we can kind of help drive that franchisee the right direction until they get their feet under them. They'll have weekly calls, like I said, up until the point that the franchisee said, hey, I've had enough. But they'll always have 1 monthly call. And at the end of the day, the business coaches, they're looking for ways to make that shop more profitable for that franchisee. So cost of goods is a little high or labor is a little high. They're going to work with that owner on an ongoing basis to make sure it's running as efficiently as possible. That's
quite extensive. I like that.
Oh, I mean, that's that piece that I think my team has spent a lot of time and energy on. We have MAD University as well, so everything we do is busted down into 2 to 4 minute videos because we can't appreciate attention span, especially with the younger labor force. So anything and everything, there's a video to it, and then a very heavy operations manual. But then beyond all of that, we're just a phone call away.
Love that. When it comes to the typical characteristics of franchisees that you're looking for, what could you say that you pick out specifically to highlight or look for in those franchisees?
Yeah, so, it doesn't really have to do with, let's call it food experience. We'll take it or leave it. What we are looking for is kind of that business mindset. So whether they have run their own business in the past or they can kind of think through it from their, maybe their corporate life. Beyond that, I'll say it's the ability to follow operations manuals, being highly coachable, especially if they don't come from a food background. We'll lead you to water as we go through our education and qualification process. It's really there to make sure we think you will drink, so to speak. So ability to follow ops manuals, coachability, and then I'll just say work ethic and perseverance are kind of the ones that kind of piggyback off of that. This business is not rocket science, all right? I'm always the first to say that, but especially that first 3 to 9 months, it's a lot of hard work. Now, we're standing there with all of our franchisees, so, we never leave people alone, so to speak, but those are the big characteristics. And then just the ability to kind of build relationships with the local community. So kind of that shaking hands, kissing babies, so to speak. But those are kind of your primary characteristics and what we look for as people go through our traditional process.
That coachability point that you made too makes so much sense, especially with how much support you guys give from that business coach standpoint. In order for that relationship to work, I would imagine you've got to be a bit coachable.
Very much so. And I think that it kind of piggybacks into the franchise world in general, in our opinion, where don't reinvent the wheel, right? We've come up with, there is a method to the madness. You cook the egg roll for 3 minutes. It's not 2:30. It's not 3:30. It is 3. We want people to kind of more focus on the operation side, and generally just kind of treating customers, employees the same way they would want to be treated. And we guide through that process, but yeah, that coachability factor is a major component.
And what does it take to financially open a Teriyaki Madness location?
Yeah, so typically what we're looking for is total access to about that 500 to 550 or better. That's between liquid capital and loans. That's like your all-in number, includes operating capital, franchise fees. Now, traditionally an SBA loan, people are looking for about 20 to 30% down in order to get a loan on the rest. So I'll say, let's call it about $100,000 to $150,000 in liquid capital, and then typically net orders around that kind of 600, 650 and above is typically what we see is necessary in order to secure a loan.
One final question, and I know this gets asked a lot, which is why it's on the frequently asked questions portion of this. How have you weathered the COVID environment at Teriyaki Madness?
Yeah. So for us, I'll say that we love recessions. And it turns out we also like pandemics from a transaction standpoint. As humans, we don't like either one. But we have done quite well through COVID. I think we're actually up 32% year over year stacked same store sales growth from 2019 to 2021. And I think it's based on we were kind of built to be COVID friendly without even knowing it. So we were small footprints, low employee counts, and even pre-COVID, 70% of all of our business was outside the four walls, basically meaning we only sat about 30% of customers. And so I think that combined with the technology that we've invested in, so the online ordering app is probably the biggest outwardly facing, very much has helped, and it's driven a lot of business for franchisees, removing some of the heavy fees that come from working with an Uber Eats or DoorDash directly. And lastly, I'll just say our food's very portable. Like, it's built to travel, compared to, let's call it, burgers and fries and sandwiches of the world, where there's kind of that sogginess factor. And so, yeah, we opened, I think, 25 shops last year, 31 the year before that. But we've been growing every year. We had about a 45 to 60 day kind of drop around original COVID landing. After that, we've been up quarter after quarter, year over year.
That's pretty incredible considering the circumstances. So that's amazing to hear. Thank you for sharing that. On that note, is there anything that we may have missed that you would like to touch on in regards to frequently asked questions about joining the Teriyaki Madness team?
I think those are the core questions that we typically get asked. But as someone goes through a traditional education and qualification process, we can dive into the nuts and bolts on any specific department. Once again, I'll say we do over-index on kind of that support training side, and we always want to make sure people are going in eyes wide open. But I would say that kind of gives people a pretty good jump on maybe who we are and why someone should take a look at Teriyaki Madness in the first place.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Tyler. Learned a lot. Really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to answer those questions for us today.
Absolute pleasure.